This place is so much stranger than anybody ever tells you. It's this neighborhood in Queens, New York, tucked just behind the skyline of Manhattan. And I'm convinced that every single person that I talked to before I went there lied right to my face. They talk about the food, the culture, the sense of community, how it's the most diverse place in the world, loud, colorful, full of life. But nobody ever talks about the quiet parts, the buildings that nobody ever goes near. There's something buried in that neighborhood, something old, and we had no idea how dark and evil it was until we got there. So back in late grade school, early high school, I would spend some of my summers in New York because I had a bunch of family there. I had a bunch of fun with all of my cousins, my aunts and uncles, but a lot of the time, they had a lot of their friends in the area that they lived, so they were busy during their summers and they weren't around. Luckily, one of my really close friends also spent the summers in Queens. My friend Hamza's mom worked at this preschool in Queens, New York that operated year-round. So it was a regular summer. Me and Hamza would meet up every single day. We'd hang out. We'd get into some trouble. It wasn't the city that we usually lived in. We had some fantastic memories there. But the one thing about those summers that was kind of a drag was the fact that we had to do service hours for our school. So even though we're spending the summer in a completely different state and it's supposed to be super fun, we have to log like 100 service hours. And if we don't do it every single year, by the time graduation comes around, we won't be eligible to graduate. That's how annoying our school was. So inside of what was supposed to be such a fun summer of adventure in the boroughs, we had to spend hours every single morning working at Hamza's mom's job to collect service hours. We talked about it and we were trying to make the best of it because we were doing it together. At least we were going to get to work and probably have some laughs there and hopefully slip in as many fake service hours as we could so we could wrap it up and just get to our summer fun. Luckily, our parents let us have the first 2-3 weeks of summer without doing any work, but as it was closing in, we were really dreading it, but not for the reasons that we should have. We didn't want to have to wake up early and spend time cleaning up a preschool, but we had no idea what this place was actually like, and there was plenty of other reasons to be dreading it other than the silly adolescent reasons that we were dreading it for. So I have to tell you a little bit about this preschool for all of this to make sense. Like I said, it was a year-round preschool. I don't really know why, but I can only assume it's because parents still have to work in the summer, so they need somewhere to send their kids. And maybe it acted as half daycare, half preschool. But that wasn't the odd thing about it. The thing that stuck out to me was its location and the way it looked. Where I was from, I was used to a small storefront that was turned into a preschool or some type of daycare that had some playful lettering on the front that looked like little kid toy lettering, and maybe it was a 2,000 square foot facility tops. And they were located in places that made sense, like plazas with multiple storefronts. But this one was located at the end of a residential street. And if you're not familiar with Queens, even though it's a residential street, it still has a city feel to it. It's not like Manhattan, there's not skyscrapers, but you could feel that you're in the boroughs. It has a level of like an urban landscape to it still. So there's all these residential houses, and then on the corner is this massive preschool. When we pulled up to it, I was looking around for where the preschool was because I didn't think it was the 3-story building. And it had an odd shape to it too. It had a pretty wide base and it went up like 2 or 3 floors, but the top of the building had like points and stuff to it. And I was like, this thing is massive. How many children go to school here? And it got even bigger when we went inside. This place was as big as my grade school, my Chicago public school grade school. It's not like I went to a small private one or a charter. The scale of this place made no sense to me. Multiple classrooms, 3 stories, an auditorium, a large cafeteria, a large kitchen in the cafeteria. I felt like every single child that lived in Queens went to this place. So we're walking in, we're trying to be on our best behavior. We don't know who we are meeting. We don't know who we're going to be working for or working with. We're not used to working with adults, so we're kind of just being quiet, awkward teenagers waiting for Hamza's mom to speak for us and waiting for the opportunity for us to be able to go do some type of cleaning project alone where we could then goof off and attempt to have some fun. So we walk into the front door of this place and we meet the person that Hamza's mother works with directly, very sweet woman. I believe her name was Janice. And then she introduces us to the people that we're primarily going to be working with. And it's a couple dudes, I assumed in their 30s. One was named Hector, and I think the other one was named Derek. Derek wasn't very talkative, but Hector talked to us quite a bit. and Hector had a lot of interesting things to say, once he had a reason to say them. But he didn't have a reason the first day. It was a very normal day. Hamza's mom went with the lady that she worked with to the lunchroom cafeteria, and they prepared food for the next day or some event that they had going on, and she sent us up with Hector and Derek to go collect garbages and mop some floors. It was very straightforward work. It only took us a couple hours, and at the end of it, Hector would sign off on our service hours, and he would just put the exact amount of hours that we worked and his signature. But when things started to get weird was when we were leaving the first day. We said goodbye to Hector, very nice guy. We said goodbye to Derek, very odd guy. We walked downstairs from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor to meet up with Hamza's mom. We're waving our goodbyes and we're walking down the main long hallway to the front door of this place. We're pretty tired from the work that we did. We're a little bit excited that we're gonna get to go out for the rest of the night, but none of us are talking. We're all just kind of in our own world until this odd sound rattles our ears and all of the lockers even kind of shake a little bit. And my initial instinct was to think that this was the school bell. Like, oh, that's a weird bell to go off to signify classes ending for preschoolers. Like, that's pretty loud and intense. So me and Hamza look at each other and we're pointing up kind of just like at the ceiling. Like, where's that coming from? What kind of alarm is that? And we both look towards his mom to get some answers to this question of, is this normal? And the look on her face is telling us that this is absolutely not normal. So then my mind starts jumping to the conclusion that, is this some type of fire alarm? Is this a carbon monoxide alarm? Like, I don't know what's happening here. But then her face turns into kind of like a light, awkward smirk, like as if something unusual is happening that she might almost be like a little bit embarrassed of. She's not intensely scared, but something is wrong here. And I could see on her face that she didn't want this to happen while we were here. And she starts picking up the pace of her walking a little bit, and she's waving towards us, kind of like grabbing my wrist and grabbing Hamza's wrist to usher us out of the building faster. And she's not my mom, so I'm not barking questions at her. Like, I'm very respectful to Hamza's mom, but Hamza is like, Mom, what is that? Why are you acting like this? Like, he's throwing like a couple questions in as she's basically pulling us out of the building. And she's half smirking with a little bit of fear in her eyes and like shaking her head like, I'm not gonna answer while we're still in here. And we pick up the pace a little bit to get out of the building faster, because when you feel an adult's energy that's signaling to you like, we might not be safe here, you kind of get a little freaked out. So we stop asking questions, we get out of the front of the building, and she gets us into the car. And once we're in the car, Hamza turns towards his mom and says, what was that? And her answer was completely bizarre, because we're half laughing, asking if that's like a fire alarm or that's their school bell. And she says, I've only heard that sound 3 times since working there. Mind you, she's worked there for 15 years. And she continues by saying, all of the employees know that if you hear that, it's time to leave the building, which doesn't answer the questions if that is a fire alarm or a carbon monoxide alarm. And she caps it off with a statement that was so vague and so unsettling that I didn't want to go back there the next day. She said that no one knows where that sound comes from. It's not even a bell that's located in the school. And when she said bell, I realized that this wasn't an alarm. It sounded like one of those big, intense church bells, but it sounded as if somebody hit it like a gong a couple feet away from your head. The most frustrating thing about this situation was that Hamza's mom wouldn't tell us any more about what she was inferring. She wouldn't tell us about this bell that had no location. She wouldn't tell us why we were supposed to leave the premises if we heard it. The only explanation that she gave us was that we probably wouldn't want to continue working there if she told us everything. And I don't know if she was aware of this, but that didn't make it any better. That didn't make us want to go back there more. It only made us more concerned and curious about what was going on there. So Hamza and I spent the rest of that day talking circles around the subject about what she could possibly mean, and we put together a game plan for the next day about how we're going to get more information about this place. And we realized pretty quickly that the only way we were going to figure out what was going on here was through small stories from different sources, because his mom also mentioned that everybody's kind of hush-hush about it. But we knew we would be able to find some crack to get a little bit more information. And this might sound silly, but it actually made us a bit more excited to go there the next day, opposed to exploring the burrows. We were up bright and early, ready to go talk to Janice, Hector, or Derek. The next day was very similar to the day before. We met Janice in the lobby, Hamza's mom and her went down to the cafeteria. She handed us off to Hector and Derek, and we headed to wherever they wanted to go. We let them tell us the itinerary for the day, nodding, being good. Yep, give me the supplies that I need. We'll handle whatever you need. Waiting for the right opportunity to bring up this conversation. And the first opportunity that we had was with Derek, because we were in a random bathroom, taking out the garbages, wiping down the toilets, just small remedial tasks. And me and Hamza shoot a look at each other like, we're in here alone with Derek, Hector's not around, let's open up this conversation a little bit. So I call over to Derek, who's elbow deep in a toilet, and I say something pretty vague. I'm like, yo Derek, did you hear that bell yesterday as we were leaving? And the dude doesn't answer. I mentioned that Derek wasn't very talkative. If anything, he was actually a little bit weird. But I don't hear anything from him. He doesn't acknowledge it. He doesn't do a sound like, He does nothing. He doesn't even reply. So I pretend to make it a group conversation by calling over to Hamza. And I'm like, Hamza, did you hear it? And Hamza knows what I'm doing. We're trying to make this an orchestrated group conversation. And he's like, yeah, I heard it. It was a little bit weird. I asked my mom about it. She said that nobody knows where that bell is. Do you know where it is, Derek? Derek doesn't answer. The man's just grinding away on a toilet, completely ignoring us. So I finish up tying this garbage bag and throwing it into the main garbage bin, and I walk over to see what Derek's doing. And he's standing in the stall, staring at the corner. And he's kind of just picking at something, as if he's pretending to like scrape gum away off a corner. But I could see into his ears. He doesn't have headphones in. He's just blatantly ignoring us. So I call into the stall. I'm like, yo, Derek, you good? And he turns around towards me and he just nods his head yes. And I'm like, did you hear what I asked you? And he nods his head yes again. So I ask him again, did you hear the bell yesterday? And he nods his head yes again. But he's not talking. So then Hamza walks over, and now it feels a little bit weird because we're standing outside of a stall and he's standing inside of a stall. And we're just kind of lobbing questions towards him. Did you hear the bell? What is the bell? Do you know where the bell is? And he's nodding his head yes to everything, but he won't verbally say anything. So I thought a pretty good question is, do you not want to talk about the bell? And he finally replies, I don't. And he walks right past us and out the door as if he's moving on to his next task. This lit a fire under Hamza and I. He walked out of the bathroom and we looked at each other and we're like, there is something going on here. Like, yeah, Derek's a little bit of an oddball, but when we ask him about sports or we ask him about what he's into or cars, he'll chat a little bit, he'll chop it up. We asked him about this bell, and this man is acting like his lips are sealed shut, just shaking his head yes. And when you ask for verbal confirmation, I don't. Point blank period, not entertaining the conversation, and removing himself from the conversation immediately after. So I asked Hamza, has your mom talked about this before? Like, were you aware of this situation? And he's like, bro, I have never heard my mom slightly bring up anything weird about this place. She's always just said, going to work, had a good day, I like my coworkers. She's never had a complaint in the world. So I asked him a follow-up question. You're telling me that she's never come home stressed out or acting a little bit off. And I see Hamza kind of scan his mind by looking at the ceiling. And he goes, bro, actually, there was one time. A few years ago, she came home and it seemed like she was shaken up, but she wouldn't tell me about it. I know she told my dad about it, but they wouldn't tell me anything. I knew it happened at her job, but I don't know any details about it, and she took like a week off. But then she ended up going back and there hasn't been problems since, but I really don't know what it is, but that's the only thing that I could think of. In my head, I was like, we should ask her about that tonight. Even though she wouldn't tell us any more information about the bell, maybe she'll reminisce on whatever that was. So we leave the bathroom to go catch up with Derek because we don't want to get in trouble. We're still doing service hours here. Derek and Hector are still in charge of us. So we're walking down the hallway and we see one of the doors is propped open, so we know that they're definitely in there cleaning. We walk down this long hallway, we take a left through this door, and they're doing the regular stuff in there. Taking out the garbages, wiping down the desks, sweeping the floors, cleaning the whiteboards, and we knew exactly what to do. We just pick up the cleaning supplies and we join them. Because if we want to have any type of conversation, Hector is not going to entertain it unless we are hands-on helping. He's one of those guys. He's friendly, he's open, he'll talk to you the entire time. He's a great dude, but you gotta be working. And I think the best thing to do in this situation is to just bring it up again. Right in front of Derek, right in front of Hector, because I want to see how Hector acts when we say it in front of Derek, because Derek just went nonverbal with us. So we start wiping down the whiteboard and sweeping the floors, and I call over to Hector, who's wiping down the desks, and I'm like, yo, did you hear that bell yesterday as we were leaving? And Hector starts laughing immediately, but one of those laughs that's like, you're asking something that you shouldn't be asking. And his immediate response is, no, hermano, we're not talking about that. And Hamza and I both stand up and look towards him and we're like, why was that your response? Why can't we talk about it? We just heard something. And Hamza says to Hector, my mom was acting really weird about it. What's going on with you guys? And Hector is being very jokey, similar to how like an older cousin or an uncle would kind of tease you with information that he doesn't want you to know. He's shaking his head as he's wiping down the table with a smile on his face though. He doesn't look particularly scared, but he's saying things like, you guys are asking questions you don't want to know the answers to. And we're like, we definitely do. It was a weird thing. Why are you guys acting like it's this big secret? And he finishes his row of desks and he looks towards us and he's like, guys, you're not going to want to work here if I start telling you the stories. And I need as many hands as I could get. I can't clean this whole place myself. And he's being a little bit sarcastic with it. But it's like he's dangling this carrot in front of us like, I got some stories for you. And he's insinuating that they're freaky. And at that point, he had opened up the conversation for us to start begging him. Because when you start implying that you have such juicy information that we're not even going to want to show up here again, you gotta tell us. He would have been better off going nonverbal like Derek. He just made us feel awkward and more confused. Hector made us curious. He also said stories as if the stories were plural. And as we're begging him like, dude, you gotta tell us something. Like, we're just cleaning. This is so boring. Give us something that's exciting. He finally breaks a little bit as if he's kind of enjoying this conversation. He goes, if you guys clean those 2 rows of desks, I'll tell you one story. So Hamza and I take our rags, take our disinfectant spray bottles, and we start spritzing and swiping as if we're racing to get to the end of this row. And we're zooming, we're cleaning the inside, the outside. I'm wiping down the legs of the desks and the chairs. And finally, we get to the end. Took us about 5 minutes flat. And at this point, Hector had moved over to the whiteboard and he's like, boys, come help me with the whiteboard. We hustle over there, we're wiping it down. And once it's finished, we looked at him and we're like, dude, you owe us one. But his demeanor had changed a little bit. It had changed from slightly joking about it and dangling it in front of us to almost confirming with us that we were ready for it. Almost one of those conversations where somebody is gauging if you're ready to have your innocence taken away from you. This is a story, this is information that might change you. And he got more serious. His eyes weren't like glinting with laughing. They actually had like a little bit of sorrow in them, it seemed. And he starts off the story by saying, Derek doesn't like when we talk about it because he thinks it makes this stuff happen more frequently. And we look at Derek and he looks visibly nervous that Hector's about to open up about this. But we want Hector to open up about it. So we signal to him, we're ready. Come on, destroy our innocence, dude. And he continues by telling us his history in this place a little bit. He goes, I've worked here for 25 years, guys. I've cleaned every single one of these rooms 1,000 times. I mop these hallways every morning and every night. And before Derek got hired, I was in this place completely alone for years and years. I had some people come help, but they would usually quit after a few months because they couldn't handle it like I handle it. If you spend too much time here, you might start seeing things that you don't really like or hearing things that don't really make sense. And he starts gesturing to the entire room and out the windows. And he's like, you see, like we're on the 3rd floor right now. I go to the top of the school and I make my way down. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor, cafeteria, kitchen, and then I leave. I come in as the kids are leaving. A lot of them are still on the 1st floor. So when I get to the top floor and I start cleaning, it's kind of quiet, but I could hear people below me. By the time I'm on the 2nd floor, it's just light chatter of some of the staff that's still here. By the time I'm on the 1st floor, the entire place is silent. But every once in a while, as I'm finishing up my shift, and I'm cleaning the last hallway or I'm in the cafeteria, and it's starting to get dark out, the place isn't quiet anymore. And boys, I hope this doesn't happen while you're here. And it actually doesn't seem to happen when there's multiple people in the building. It's only happened to me when I'm alone. But I'll start to hear very loud slams coming from the 3rd floor. I'll be mopping with my headphones in. The place is completely silent, and I'll hear doors slamming. And I'm not saying a gust of wind comes in through the window and slams one door or slams 2. It sounds like multiple doors on the 3rd floor are being slammed shut, ripped open, slammed shut, over and over and over again when nobody's here. Hamza and I realized in that moment that Hector was telling us like a ghost story, like a poltergeist story. We thought that there was some weird thing with the bell, and this dude is going full Haunting in Connecticut on us, saying that doors are slamming. and being dead serious about it, and that the activity only occurs when he's alone here at night. And as Hamza and I are looking at each other, honestly freaking out internally, but like pretending to be kind of like laughy about it to each other to make it seem like we're not both terrified by what he's saying because we're currently on the 3rd floor, Hector starts walking over to one of the doors and he goes, "Boys, come look at this." And he opens the door as wide as it goes and he starts pointing up at what I think is like the hinges of the door. But when we get closer to it, I realize what he's actually pointing at. And it's like the hydraulic system that's installed into the top of the door. It basically makes it a soft closed door. Like there's little kids here. Like we don't want little kids' fingers getting slammed. You can't even slam these doors. And he gestures to the door and he goes, "Go ahead, try to slam it." And we both grab the handle and try to give it a pull. And it's as if this hydraulic mechanism that makes it a soft closed door has like 400 pounds of force. Like the harder you pull it, the harder it is to close. And physically, we could not slam one of these doors. And he goes, "Every single door on this floor has one of those installed." And I hear them opening and closing like they're cabinets. So we let that story sink in for a little bit, and I can't speak for Hamza, but I could see it on his face that it affected him in a very similar way that it affected me. Now, every single dark corner of this place was filled with a demon. Every single inch of my body was on edge. I did not want to be in rooms alone. I didn't want to go run errands alone. I wanted to stay with the group because apparently bad things didn't happen when you were in a group. But Hector had spooked us so bad that we actually stopped questioning him for a few hours. And he filled that time with telling us other happy-go-lucky stories. I think he knew how much it affected us. Maybe both of our faces just went completely white and he was like, "Damn, I scared these kids. Time to tell them like some fun stories. Try to cheer them up a little bit, get them to open up, not feel as uncomfortable in this space." But nothing that he did worked. We just needed a little bit of time to digest the information and formulate the other questions that we wanted to ask him. And as you could imagine, the only questions that we wanted to ask were, how do you protect yourself from whatever is going on here? Because he seemed to really enjoy his job. He didn't seem like he wanted to quit. He mentioned that other people that he worked with would quit pretty regularly, but he didn't seem like he was going anywhere. So what are you doing to make yourself feel so comfortable and confident? So we're cleaning up at the cafeteria. We're not on the 3rd floor anymore. We hadn't heard any bad things about the cafeteria, so we think we're in a total safe zone. The lights are bright, the ambiance is good. Hamza's mom and Janice are just in the other room. There's even more people. So we bring up the topic to him again. We're getting close to leaving as well, so we see the finish line in sight. So if we could get a little bit more information about how we're supposed to prepare for our next shift and how he copes with this, that'll probably make us feel a little bit better. So Hamza calls over to him. We're all cleaning our own table, and he's about 20 feet away, and he just says, "Yo, Hector, when the door starts slamming, do you leave?" And Hector shakes his head no, and I could see that he's surprised that we're willing to talk about it again. And I could tell that he doesn't really want to talk about it around Hamza's mom and Janice, because he like looks over Hamza's shoulder to see where they're at before he answers, probably assuming that his mom might be upset with him sharing those types of stories. And I could tell that he's about to try to give us reassurance, but his reassurance was blanketed in another horrible story. He starts pointing at Derek and he goes, "You know, Derek is actually the one that taught me how to really brush things off here. All the stuff used to bother me quite a bit, but Derek said something to me one day that really resonated with me. And Derek is a man of few words, so when he speaks, you really gotta listen." And we weren't hearing the doors slamming. This thing is a little bit different. Sometimes on the 2nd floor when you're leaving and pushing the custodian cart, you could feel as if somebody else is there with you. And I'm not the only one that's felt this. Derek has felt it too. It's usually as you're exiting the floor, ready to go down to the 1st floor. That last stretch, you could feel the vibrations of somebody walking behind you, as if they're mimicking your steps from just about 10 feet. And when I'm alone, I like to keep my headphones in so I don't hear the slamming or any of the other things. But there's something about somebody walking behind you that you can just feel on the floor. It's not something you think about when there's a bunch of people around you. It's only something you think about when you think you're alone and you feel someone walking. It's different than somebody looking at you, which has its own very unique feeling. Somebody walking behind you is very distinct and pretty obvious if they're not tiptoeing. And it's something that used to really freak me out. It's something that would get me to run off of the second floor. But when it started happening to Derek, he found out a better way to deal with it. See, I had tested the situation. I would walk a few steps and I would stop, and the footsteps behind me would stop. And I would start walking again and I would hear them. And then I would stop. And it had gotten to the point where I would stop and start so much that I could 100% guarantee you that something was behind me, but I could never get myself to look. And part of me felt like I was a coward for not looking. Part of me felt like I was putting myself into worse danger for not looking, because someone's right behind me. But Derek said it best when I had mentioned it to him, and he had confirmed that he had experienced the exact same thing dozens of times. I asked him if he looked behind him, if he knew what it was, and Derek said, "That's none of my business." So that was his big advice. Mind your own business, the wise words of Derek. Yeah, somebody's stalking me in the hallways at night when I'm alone, but that's none of my business. I didn't really like that. To be honest, that philosophy wasn't something that I was going to adopt. And if I'm being honest with you, if anything, it kind of pissed me off, because both of these guys were just in this together, like, not my business, looking the other way, totally coping with the bizarre things that are happening around them. But we had to continue working there. So we didn't mention to Hamza's mom that we had gotten more information about it. We felt like we might get in trouble or something, or we might draw some tension between her and Hector. We didn't want to give her a workplace drama. So we kept it to ourselves. And the excitement that we had to go back there to investigate was completely gone. It was back to dread, 100%. And Hamza's mom definitely could tell a little bit, because she asked us if we were both okay before we entered the next day. And I couldn't tell if it was because she was trying to gauge if we had been told something or if we had experienced something, because she had quite a bit of concern in her voice, but she wasn't willing to straight up say, "Did something happen to you guys?" It was more like a broad, "Are you guys okay? Could anything be going on?" But I didn't want to call her out for it. I could tell you're fishing to see if we're noticing the weird things that are going on here. But it's not my place to call out. So we pull up to the school, we begrudgingly walk in. She hands us off to Hector, and we start heading to do our chores. And I whisper to Hamza, "Do you think that your mom thinks that we've seen something?" And he looks at me and he's like, "You got that feeling too, right? Like she was fishing for answers?" And I was like, that's exactly what I thought. Because it's not like we're out late or we had to be here super early. And she has no idea that Hector told us anything. So she must be picking up our energy that we don't want to be here for a different reason. But she knows that she didn't tell us anything about that bell, or at least enough for us to be that scared of the place. But she's sensing something. And we dabbled with the idea of questioning her a little bit further, but we weren't sure. Because like I said, we're not trying to start a drama between her and Hector. So we're back with Derek and Hector, we're given our chores, and our chores of that day, of course, were on the 3rd floor. And we had a laugh about it. He was like, "Yep, guys, there's this set of windows on the 3rd floor. You guys just got to clean them on the inside and out, and then you're good for the day." It was going to be a shorter day. That is all we had to do. And he said it as if it was a treat. But we're like, "Are you guys going to be there with us?" And he knew exactly why we were asking him that. And he's like, "Unfortunately, guys, we have a major cleanup in the basement bathroom." And we're both rolling our eyes, basically shaking our heads that we don't want to go up there alone. But Hector tries his best to reassure us, like, "Guys, the sun's still out. I know I spooked you a little bit. Stuff like that doesn't happen all the time. You guys will be done with that in 20-30 minutes, and you guys can get out of here. And here, I'll give you 2 full service hours for 20 minutes of work." That was the kind of bribe we needed to go to the 3rd floor by ourselves. So we grabbed our buckets, we grabbed our rags, we grabbed the Windex, we grabbed the paper towels, and we headed to the 3rd floor. The place is nice. It's not eerie, it's not that scary, but when you know about the things that go on there, it makes it horrifying. So we have to go to this classroom that's in the middle of the hallway. We basically run down the hallway and run into the classroom and get as close to the windows as we can, because we could see the outside world. At least we could see the neighborhood, and it's bright outside, and we don't have to look behind us like at the school. And this is one of those very large classrooms. It could probably have 40 kids in there, but it's the ones that are so large that it almost seems as if it's 2 classrooms put together, like there was a wall taken out of the middle and there's a door on both sides of the classroom. So there's 2 doors here, and both of them are propped open. We propped them open. We had the hydraulic thing at the top, completely locked out, and we had the kickstand down because we didn't want them to be closed, and we popped all of the windows open so the sounds of the burrows could flood in, so it didn't feel like we were in a silent preschool. And we're doing our best, we're cleaning the windows. It probably was only gonna take about 20 minutes. And first we had to clean the outside of them. So like I said, we popped them all open and we're like reaching our arm around cleaning the outside. But as we continue to clean them, we have to close them to clean the inside. And we didn't think about this because we were just trying to clean them as fast as we could. But we cleaned all of the outsides first and then closed all the windows, making it completely silent in there. And we kind of looked at each other like we drowned out all the sound. It's completely quiet, we're a little bit freaked out, but all we have to do is spray some Windex and wipe these down. We have 5 minutes of this job left. Let's just do it. So I start spraying the first window and we're on either side of the classroom and we're working our way towards the middle together so we don't get in each other's way, and we're both responsible for half the windows. So this classroom had those strings that would hang from the ceiling where the teachers would clip some of the artwork from the kids up. So there's just like construction paper with little illustrations decorating the entire ceiling of this room, like this makeshift Christmas decorations of random Crayola drawings. So we're completely silent, cleaning these windows as fast as we can, both in a quiet panic, when all of the artwork that's clipped to these strings on the ceiling starts swaying. And I don't see it happening, but you know when you shake a piece of paper, you could kind of hear the sound that it creates? It's almost like this like whiplash or like reverb sound if you make waves with a sheet of paper. Very similar to if like a big gust of wind hit hanging papers, they would all make this sound. And it's like it happened out of nowhere. We're cleaning these windows and all of these pieces of construction paper start waving as if a big gust of wind came into the room. And we both stop completely still and we're looking at each other from the corner of our eyes because we are both on the opposite ends of the room and the windows right in front of us are closed, they're sealed shut, and when we look at each other we could see that every single window in the room is sealed shut. There should be absolutely no wind in this room, and even when they were all open there weren't gusts of wind like that. So we both don't want to move. We're frozen. We're not turning around to see these things waving in whatever wind it's waving in. And I'm trying to listen to hear if I hear the HVAC system, if the AC was turned on, if there's a fan on, if there's anything. And I realize in that moment that not only is it completely silent other than the paper, but I don't feel a gust of wind. I don't feel air conditioning and I don't feel a fan, but almost simultaneously, whatever was moving those decorations finally made its way to my back, and it didn't feel like your typical wind. It felt cold. It felt like a gust of wind that comes off Lake Michigan in the middle of winter, like the ones that make your teeth hurt when they hit your smile and make your eyelashes freeze together. It was unnaturally cold, and at the second that hit me, I could tell that it hit Hamza, but neither of us were ready to move until the door that was behind Hamza slammed shut with such an incredible force that I thought that the glass was gonna break. It made a sound like a gunshot with that door hitting the frame, and that set us off. We turned around. There was nothing in the room. The paper was not moving whatsoever, but there was one open door on the other side of the room, and we both pushed through the desks, knocking through the chairs, not caring about the havoc that we left behind us. I know I knocked over at least one desk and one chair, but we were out of that room within about 2.2 seconds, sprinting down the hallway, down 2 flights of stairs, looking for Hamza's mom. And I didn't need to confirm with Hamza. I knew what we were about to do. We were telling his mom everything, and she was going to tell us everything. We basically busted down the door into the kitchen where Hamza's mom and Janice were working. We had to run all the way through the cafeteria through that door that we busted down, and we basically skid to a stop in the middle of their workspace. Naturally, they both looked up at us, but when I looked at both of their faces, they didn't seem surprised that we were obviously scared. You know, if somebody bashes through the door into your work area, usually you're like, yo, what are you doing? Why are you acting like this? Why would you slam through that door as if you ran here? But they looked like this wasn't the first time that this had happened. And both of their faces told me that they knew what conversation was about to happen. We didn't even have to say anything for Janice to look towards Hamza's mom and say, "You have to tell them, I'm not doing it again." And she walked towards the refrigerator area to continue whatever her responsibilities were. And now we're standing there in this cafeteria kitchen, and Hamza's mom is looking around trying to grasp the thoughts of how she's going to explain this to us. She wasn't even asking us what happened. Obviously she was concerned because we were both scared, but you would think that she would be trying to get details about what was going on with us, but she wasn't. She was trying to figure out how she was going to explain it to us. So I spoke up in a really respectful manner, obviously, and I said, "Hector told us a lot already, but we just had something happen to us on the 3rd floor." And for a second, I saw a glint in her eye that she might have gotten mad at Hector, so we were right for not telling her initially. But since I followed up by saying, "and something just happened to us on the 3rd floor," she knew that she couldn't jump to starting a drama with Hector. She had to address what just happened. Even though I could tell she wanted to say, "Why did he tell you and what did he tell you?" But she was forced to say, "What happened to you guys?" And we went on to explain to her that all the windows were closed, wind started blowing in the room, ice cold wind in fact, and one of the hydraulic doors slammed shut. So we ran down here immediately like it just happened right now. And Janice comes walking back from the refrigerator area, and she has the audacity to say, "At least they didn't see the Hatman." And it was another one of those situations, kind of like with Hector, where he seems numb to everything that happens here, where he's kind of joking about it. Janice is being sarcastic, and she dropped the Hatman, as if this is a common theme around this place. But we're so shaken up from what had just happened to us, we don't start immediately questioning about what she said or berating Hamza's mom. We're standing there, desperately scared, waiting for his mom to explain what is going on to us. But instead of giving us the explanation that we rightfully deserved in that moment, she told us to hang out for 5 more minutes as she's wrapping up, and she'll tell us back at home. She'll tell us everything that's going on. And Hamza gave a little bit of pushback in the moment, but she shut him up very quickly and she said, "You're going to be very happy after I tell you at home. I promise you don't want to hear what I have to say while we're in this room." That shook both of us to our core because we thought we were safe down here in the cafeteria and the kitchen. We only heard about what was going on the 3rd and 2nd floor. So we went ahead and skedaddled to the corner and sat down on the bench and waited very patiently like 2 very good boys until Hamza's mom and Janice were done cleaning up for the day. And when she was ready to go, we waddled behind her like 2 little scared ducks and hustled out of that school and into the car. The car ride home was completely quiet. Nobody wanted to open the conversation. But when we pulled up to the house, where we would usually get out and Hamza and I would go exploring the burrows, or we would go inside and eat dinner, she told us to not get out of the car yet because she didn't want to talk about it in front of Hamza's dad, because they had promised each other that they weren't going to mention it to the kids. But she said the only reason she was breaking this rule, that she was going to tell the dad that she broke later that night, was because we had witnessed something. So it was actually worse for her to not tell us. And she takes a deep breath and she starts to tell a story, very similar to the way that Hector did. We thought that she might have answers about what was going on here, but all she had was personal experiences. So she goes, "Everything was totally fine when I started working there. The first year, nothing happened. It was totally normal. Janice had already worked there. She never mentioned anything to me. Neither did Hector or Derek. I think they wanted me to enjoy the time that I had before I realized what was really going on there." And Janice is laughing from the front seat. She goes, "Tell them about the first time. You remember the one I'm talking about. Just tell them." And Hamza's mom rolls her eyes, but since we're not at the school, they seem to be a little bit more jokey about it because we're not there to experience it at the moment. So she takes another deep breath and she goes, "Okay, you guys know how the kitchen is set up, right? How it's at the far end of the cafeteria. It has that one big door with the big glass window that you could see into the cafeteria. And then once you're inside, there's the large island in the middle and the 2 sinks directly to the left. So after all of the kids eat and all of the kids leave, we have all their dishes and we have to clean them up. And we have these big industrial dishwashers. And Janice and I, we both do it at the same time to get it done in half the time. She's at one sink and I'm at the other sink. We're about 7 feet apart, but if we were close together, we would be shoulder to shoulder. We're facing the same wall. And directly to my left is that large door with the large window that you could see out into the cafeteria. And me and Janice had only been working together for a few months, still getting to know each other, still chatting. And I look over to her and she's looking at me very funny. I'm closer to that door with the big glass window, and I could see that she's looking over my shoulder at something through the window. and she looks a little bit scared. Nobody's supposed to be in the school, so I'm thinking maybe one of the homeless people in the neighborhood made their way in. Is somebody trying to rob the place? So I turn around and I look through the window and I see a man standing in the middle of the cafeteria, and he's a little bit in the distance. He's definitely a grown man. He's wearing some type of trench coat. He has dark pants, a dark trench coat, a dark shirt, and a dark top hat. Can't see anything about his face. He's just standing there in the middle of a preschool cafeteria after hours. I can't tell if he's raggedy or if he's put together. He's too far away. And I can't tell if he's aggressive, if he's a robber, or he's a parent looking for their kid that might have ran off after school, because he's just standing there. But when I was looking at him, I knew in my heart that something was off about him. I felt like we might be in danger. But the longer that I looked at him, it felt more as if he was just observing us. He didn't feel necessarily threatening. He was definitely large. He was a dark figure. And even though his presence didn't feel violent, it also didn't feel good. It felt like he was there for a reason. So I look back towards Janice to see what her expression is, and she's still just looking over my shoulder. I get her attention and I ask her if we should go out there and check, and she diverts her eyes to me, so we're making eye contact, and she shakes her head no. Then I look back towards the window and the man is completely gone. Against my instincts, I go towards the door and I open it up and I shout into the cafeteria, "Hello? Is anybody there? Are you looking for your kid? Who are you looking for?" Just trying to get any response whatsoever, but the man is completely gone. Janice is urging me to close the door and saying that it's nobody. Don't worry about that, ignore it, let's just finish up and leave. But I look towards Janice and I tell her, we both just saw the same man. What are you talking about? What if he needs help? What if he's looking for his kid? And that's when Janice finally broke it to me that that wasn't the first time that she's seen that man. Apparently, he pops up pretty often around here. Standing in random hallways, standing in the cafeteria, but he's never there when you look back. Obviously, I was confused, so I tell Janice that I'm gonna go look for him. And naturally, Janice didn't want me to go alone, so she came with me and she let me know that every single door in this place was locked. Nobody would be able to get in, and we went and checked every possible door. The entire place was sealed, and there was no sign of any man anywhere. And that's when she finally told me about the Hatman and told me about all the times that she had seen him. And I was finally let in on this place's secret. Hamza and I couldn't believe what she was telling us, and we were trying to attach whoever this was to Hector's story about somebody following him in the hallway, or thinking that some crazy dude is living in the basement of the school and he goes up to the 3rd floor and smashes these doors closed. But none of it really made sense, especially when his mom kept going, because Hamza very quickly asked her, "Was that the only time you saw him?" And she shook her head no. And she says, I've seen him quite a few times, but there was only one time I saw him in this room. Usually he's pretty far away, minding his own business. But one night, Janice and I, and Janice laughs at that exact moment because she knows what story that Hamza's mom is about to tell. We were in the exact place that we were the first time, doing the dishes, 7 feet away from each other, facing the same wall. The only things that were between us were the 2 dishwashers and 2 pretty narrow refrigerators that have about a 5-inch gap in between them. It's a completely normal night. We don't hear anything, we don't see anything. We're both focused on the dishes that we're doing, and from the corner of both of our eyes, we see movement in between us. We didn't hear him whatsoever. We saw him. He was to my right and he was to her left, and he walked right in between us. I saw him for a fraction of a second, but it was as if he walked in between the 2 refrigerators that were between us. It was the same man with the same trench coat, with the same silhouette, the same height, and he walked in between this 5-inch gap, as if he was able to shrink himself and disappear into the wall, as if the physicality of these massive refrigerators didn't restrain him from moving through them freely. And it left Janice and I looking at each other because he walked right in between us, knowing that we saw the exact same thing, and as quickly as he was there, he was gone. So luckily, the next day that we had to work there was a different schedule. We weren't in the preschool alone. There was some type of concert going on for like a summer school for like middle school age kids. They had like flutes and saxophones and trumpets, French horns. To be honest, the kids were really, really bad. I'm not gonna pretend like this was the next big orchestra. It was hard to be in there. But the good thing about it was that the school was filled with kids, the school was filled with parents, and we were just there to kind of clean up after the entire event. We also had to prep the entire space for everybody, so we got there a little bit early, we cleaned up the area, and then while everybody was there was kind of like our break. We were supposed to still be around, just in case anything happened, a quick cleanup here if anybody needed help, but it wasn't super serious. The real work would be after everybody left. So this horrible concert is going on, and I feel a headache brewing, so I'm like, let me get away from this for a second. Let me go to a quiet bathroom. And like I said, this preschool was so much bigger than it should be. We're on the opposite end of where the cafeteria is, where this weird auditorium is. We hadn't been to that side of the school the entire time that we had been there, but I saw a bathroom sign and I figured that I would follow it, and the bathroom was probably going to be pretty quiet. So I leave the auditorium, I go down a set of stairs to where it says this bathroom is, and I see a door that's wide open. It's propped open, and the reason it's propped open is because there's no working light fixture inside of this bathroom. It's in kind of like the basement of this auditorium section, and the only working light is in the stairwell. But there was also an exit door right near the stairwell that was wide open as well, letting sunlight in. So it wasn't like this horrible, creepy stairwell basement bathroom. It was good enough, and it was quiet. So I get into the stall, I sit down, and I open my little sliding phone. Couldn't doom scroll at the time, but I had a couple games on my phone. A little bit of Tetris, a little bit of Spades. I was fully enjoying myself. And before I went down there, I pretty much told Hamza what I was doing, but I told him, come a little bit after me if you're going to, so we don't have Hector like bark at us for wandering off. So I hear somebody enter the bathroom, and I can only assume that it's Hamza because everybody else is watching this horrible recital. So from the stall, I call out to him with like a silly joke. I don't even remember what it was, but it was stupid little boy humor, and I don't get a response. So then I think, oh, it's Hector and he's gonna be knocking on the door and I'm gonna be in trouble here. But all I get is silence. So I'm sitting on this toilet, not even using it, and I tilt my head down a little bit to see who's walking by, to see the shoes, to see if Hamza's gonna be messing with me. Maybe he's like loading up paper towels and wetting them to throw them over at me. I don't know what he's planning, but I don't see Hamza's sneakers. I see these two really big black shoes. They almost looked like those really bulky non-slip shoes that waiters have to use when they're working in restaurants and behind bars. But they also had an old school vibe to them. They didn't seem contemporary whatsoever. And I was only able to see the shoes. I couldn't see socks, I couldn't see pants, because there was some type of like black gown or black dress right near the shoes. And for a moment I thought, did I go into the woman's bathroom on accident? But then I remembered, like, no, I saw the urinals when I came in. I just decided to go into the stall. So is this lady in the wrong bathroom? So as this person is walking by the stall, very slowly, I might add, I try to peek through the crack to see if it is a woman wearing a dress that I should probably tell that she's in the wrong room. But they're walking so closely to the stall that when they get to the crack, I can't see any details about them. It's just black. But while the figure is in this crack, my eyes start to go up because I was looking for details until I was able to see about 3 inches of this person's head above the stall. They weren't peering over looking into the stall at me, they were just walking past for a second. But these stall doors were fairly tall. So whoever this was had to be above 6'5" for me to be able to see the crown of their head above this stall while I'm sitting. So then I think, okay, so it has to be a man. So is it a man wearing a kilt? Is it a man wearing a dress? Who is this person? And my curiosity takes over, so I get up, I open the stall, because they continue to walk past very quietly. And I'm out of the stall and I look to my left towards the large part of the bathroom, expecting to see this very tall man using the urinal or washing his hands. But what I see is somebody with the janitor door open that's at the far end of the bathroom, crouching their head down to get inside of the door because of how tall they are. And I'm only able to see about 40% of their body before the door closes behind them of the janitor's closet. And what I saw was clearly a female, and this female was wearing a nun's outfit, and she was definitely above 6'5", and she crouched her way into a normal sized door and closed it behind her. And I didn't like the way I felt about it, and I didn't want to wait for her to exit that closet. I ran out of that bathroom and upstairs and told Hamza exactly what I saw, and I asked him if he had seen her at this recital. And he's like, dude, there's no 6'8" nun here. We waited in that recital the entire time, staring at that back door down towards that bathroom to see if that woman came back up at any time. She never came out of that bathroom. And we didn't know who to ask about it other than Hector. So we waited for all of the tone-deaf children to leave with their parents who were not so rightfully proud, and we started cleaning up after them. It was our responsibility to clean up the main area, and Hector and Derek were somewhere else, like cleaning up the food area. We knew what our responsibilities were, so we didn't get to talk to them immediately. And after the course of an hour of cleaning, what I saw in the bathroom wasn't at the forefront of my mind. We had started talking about other stuff. The lady never came up. All of the doors around us were open. It didn't feel unsafe where we were at the moment. So when Hector and Derek came to where we were and we were doing one more round to make sure the place was clean, it wasn't the first thing that I thought to ask. It wasn't until we got to the lobby and we were cleaning up where all of the parents arrived and where they were congregated for about 20 minutes that I remembered to ask him about it. But the only reason I remembered to ask him about it was because he mentioned something that happened in this room. We were all mopping the area, and we started slightly chattering about how creepy this place was, and he said something along the lines of, "Don't get me started about what happened here." And mind you, the lobby is a beautifully well-lit area. It's basically all glass windows. It looks really welcoming and inviting, but he's talking about something that happened here. And the way that he was talking about it got my attention much more than relaying to him what happened to me in the basement. So we egg him on to tell this story. And this man goes, "I was mopping in here with Derek maybe like 6 months ago. And you know, when you mop, you boys gotta remember, you start from the corner of the room and you work your way back. You backpedal out of the room so the entire floor is clean the next day, so your footprints aren't on it. So we're working side by side, backpedaling and mopping, and we're both responsible for our areas. Every few minutes, we take a break, make sure everything was good, make sure we didn't miss a spot. And on this one night, Derek goes, "Dude, you missed a spot." And I look over to the spot that looked like I wiped over, but maybe the handprints that were there were like sticky. Maybe these kids were messing with glue, or they had some type of fruit juice on their hand and they put their hands on the floor because there was handprints in a place that I felt like I had already wiped. So I knew that Derek was right. I missed a spot. I wet my mop and I go over it one more time and the handprints disappear. Okay, it only took one more once over, totally fine. Get back to mopping a little bit, we take another break, and Derek goes, "Dude, you keep missing spots." And I look down and I see 2 more handprints. Now on the other side. The first ones were to my left, the second ones were to my right. So I take 2 steps into the area that I had already mopped, and I start to wipe them, and it only takes a once over. But I'm looking at the streaks of where my mop was, and it looks like I had already done a once over, and they disappeared right away, as if they didn't need 2 swipes. So I start backpedaling, and after about 4 or 5 strokes, I see a handprint appear in front of me in real time in the areas that I had already wiped, and it was as if it was crawling towards me. I reached my mop out and I swiped over it because maybe there's some residue on the floor, but once I went over them, it was as if the hands of 10 children started crawling towards me and imprinting themselves onto the freshly mopped floor. And I had never been so scared in my life, Hermano. Derek and I left that lobby, we didn't clean it for a week. That was the scariest thing that I had heard about this place. Now there's ghost children crawling on the floor towards this guy. I didn't like anything about it. I was so happy that we only had like 5 days left of this because I never wanted to come back here again. And that disturbed me so thoroughly that what had happened to me earlier completely left my mind. But it didn't leave Hamza's mind, because he jokingly said, trying to break the tension of the story that Hector had just told, he goes, "Doug, they were probably running from that nun that you saw." And it was like all of the oxygen was sucked out of the room, because Hector looked at me way more serious than he had looked at me the entire time we'd been here. He was always half joking. Telling these stories, there was a light-hearted chuckle to almost every single one of them. But he looked at me and he said, "You saw the nun already?" I have so many questions in my head. The first one being, why did he refer to it as the nun? As if this is a thing. Because Hamza's mom referred to the hatman as if that was like an established thing here. And he's talking about the nun as if it's another established thing here. But I don't know what to say. I just wait for him to follow up. And he says to me as if he's like disappointed and a little bit scared for me. He goes, "I had never heard of somebody seeing her within the first 6 months. You seeing her in the first week is not a good sign." I hated that. I hated every single word that had just come out of his mouth. I hated the way he delivered it, I hated the details of it, and I hated the lore that he had just bestowed upon me about this nun. Mind you, this damn near 7-foot nun, and it's not a good sign that I saw her. This lady walked right by my stall. Who is she? But the question that actually came out of my mouth was, have you seen her before? Because you've been here for years. And Hector said that he had only seen her in person, like in front of him, one time. I didn't know what he meant by in person, but I just wanted to let him talk. The first thing that he did was escort us all out of the building. So now we were out front talking about this as if it is a dead serious issue. And this is what he says. A lot of the employees here, the teachers, the helpers, custodians, anybody that gets a job here, they don't stay more than 2 years. This place is a real revolving door. The only people that have stayed here is me, Derek, your mom, and Janice. There's pretty much an entire new staff every single year, and usually it has something to do with that nun. The sounds, the bell, that man with the hat we see every once in a while, that's not the stuff that drives people out. That nun gets people to leave, but she usually doesn't show herself for a while. She's not an easy one to find. I've heard a lot of the teachers here have very similar stories, and what I learned from them is that she's not really interested in us. That's why I don't see her often. That's why I only saw her once. Derek's never seen her. Hamza, I don't think your mother's seen her. I don't think Janice has seen her. That nun is interested in the kids. Everything else that goes on here seems to have some interest in the adults, but the nun only has interest in the kids. I've had multiple teachers break down in front of me and tell me that they saw her in their classrooms, and they all told me the exact same thing. They had never seen her before, and then on a random afternoon when they put the kids down for their nap and they turned off the lights in the classroom, they saw her in the corner approaching the children sleeping. Each and every one of them alerted the security that there was an intruder in the building, but when the security would get there would never be anybody. Everybody would try to calm the teacher down and tell her that it was just a figment of her imagination. She saw a shadow, but from the first day that they saw her, she would start appearing in the background everywhere. Wherever they were in the school, there was a dark corner. They said that they could see her in it, and it was as if she was following the children. And they couldn't handle it because they felt like they couldn't protect the kids from her. They felt like she was always there, and there was nothing that they can do. They never stick around. And I cut him off, and I asked him, when did you see her? And I could tell that Hector does not want to tell the story. He was a little cagey about all of the information that he had given us over the course of the week that he had worked here. But whatever this was something that he did not want to share. And I think the only reason he did was because I had seen her in my first week. Because he was looking at me like I deserved an explanation. Because if I had to continue to come here, I had to be aware of what this thing was. And he goes on to tell us this. About 4 years ago, on a field day at the school, I was here while all of the kids were here. They asked me to come in because the field day has all kinds of activities, all kinds of messes, and it would be better if I was there during it. It's one of the only times that I've been in the school while the children were here. I was doing my regular rounds, cleaning up the classrooms, grabbing garbages, and I was on the second floor. And from down the hallway, I heard a kid running in the hallway. And mind you, it's a preschooler. The kid's like 5 years old. He's not supposed to be up here by himself. I know that he probably got away from one of the groups, one of the activities, and has probably had so much sugar that he's on an adventure of a lifetime. He got away from the group and he thinks he's about to explore the school by himself. So I start slowly walking towards this kid. He has nowhere to go. I'm like a quarter of the way down the hallway. He sees me and he runs into one of the classrooms that has the door propped open. Again, I know that he has nowhere to go. I'm going to go into that classroom and I'm going to tell him that he has to go back to the group that he was a part of. All of the lights on that floor were completely off, but I'm not scared of a kid. I walked directly into that room, and that's where I saw her. The room was filled with kids, about 20 of them, all sitting crisscross on the floor, praying, but not praying regularly. They were praying so hard, as if they were desperately trying to get out of some type of punishment. And when I panned my eyes to what they were sitting around, I saw this enormous woman. And it was as if I couldn't hear her from when I was in the hallway. But when I stepped into the room, I could hear her clearly. And in the midst of these kids praying, she's screaming in a different language, using a switch, beating the devil out of one of these kids. The woman's face was gray with black around her eyes and black around her mouth, but I could barely see her with how dark this room is. But the way she was treating this child was so horrific and so cruel that I had no choice but to intervene. So I snapped the light on, and as the light illuminated the room, she completely disappeared with it, and so did all of the kids praying. And there was only one child left in the room, and it was the kid that I followed in here. He was looking in the direction of where this woman stood, and then he looked at me, and he looked back in the direction of where she was, and I asked him, "Did you see that?" This kid's 5 years old, and he looks back at me as if he's scared that he's going to be in trouble, as if he's trying to contemplate what he just saw, and he shakes his head no, and runs out of the room, back down the stairs to his group. But the way he was looking at her, looked at me, and looked back to see if she was still there, I know that he saw what I saw, but he was too young to understand what was happening, so he denied it to just not get in trouble. And that's when I started to look into things about this place. Hector genuinely asked us if we wanted to know what the truth about this place was. Derek clearly already knew, and when I was looking at his face, he seemed like he got a little bit of comfort from it. So I looked at Hamza, and I see Hamza is kind of nodding his head yes, and that's kind of where I was leaning. So we both give him big nods, and we're like, just tell us. We're sick of all of this beating around the bush. What is going on here? And Hector goes, "You're gonna have to come in with me one more time." And we both take a big sigh and we roll our eyes like, this has to be a show and tell, like you can't just tell. He's like, it won't make sense unless you see it. And honestly, what's the worst that could happen? We've already seen a few things, we've experienced a few things. What's one more round? So we follow him into the lobby where the handprints had walked all over his mopping. We walked into the main hallway right near the cafeteria where apparently the hatman lurks. We went up to the second floor where apparently somebody follows Hector down the hallway a few times a month. And we looped around to this one stairwell that you could only access from the second floor with a key. So we go down through there, and now we are in the center of this building, but we're able to see the sky. And we had no idea this was here until he took us down here. It's just this little courtyard in this building, which is also bizarre for a preschool. And we're standing in this patch of grass, and he's moving away some of the grass with his hands. And he's like, "Do you see this stuff? Do you see what's down there?" And I'm looking at it, kind of just looks like there's like gray bricks in this grass, like half covered by it. And I'm not understanding what he's trying to say. And he's like, "Guys, this is a cemetery. This is a private cemetery right here in the middle of this school." And he starts pointing at some of the engravings on some of these bricks, and I'm like, oh, these are like old headstones, and none of them are in English. You're only able to see like some symbols that are in it, and they're not in English, and it's still not adding up to me. Then he brings us back up those stairs to the second floor, takes us all the way down the hallway into what looks like it would probably be like a teacher's lounge area. We walk in there, and the entire room looks like it was in the middle of a remodel and somebody stopped. The ceilings are kind of torn down, there's wiring hanging from the ceilings, the floors are torn up, and one of the walls has half of the drywall torn down. He walks us up to it, and as I'm getting closer to it, I'm realizing how weird it is, because this room doesn't have those big clear windows that are in every other room. That wall that would usually be the windows in every other classroom was covered by drywall, except for the one patch. And in this patch, you could see that there aren't steel beams in this wall. It's like wood paneling, like finished wood paneling, as if the walls in this place were wooden before. And then right where it seemed like the work stopped, where the demolition stopped from peeling the drywall, I was able to see a light sliver of what seemed to be stained glass. And I could see some depictions of what looked to me to be like Jesus. But Jesus's face looked a little bit different. There was something a little bit off about it. I couldn't put a finger on what I was seeing, but as I was looking at it, I could tell that there was another piece of drywall on the other side, or some type of material on the other side of the stained glass. So from the outside, you couldn't see it either. And then Hector reached into the back of the wall and picked something out. It was a little like sheet of paper, and he held it up to us. And he said, "I found this in here when they were having me do this remodel." And he turns it around towards us and he says, "That's her." And I'm looking at this old photo of an enormously tall nun surrounded by children. And in that moment, I realized what was different about Jesus in that stained glass depiction. He was Asian. And I put that together because every single person in this old photo was Asian, all of the kids and the nun herself. And the picture looked like one of those that you would see in a horror documentary. It looked like the beginning of something sinister. The children didn't look like they were having fun, and the nun did not look like a kind woman. And Hector goes on to explain that this building was initially built as a Korean church in the 1950s. And the cemetery that's in the courtyard is all of the children that died here. And the woman in this photo was the main nun that ran this place. She ran it with an iron fist because this place had only existed because of all of the refugees fleeing the Korean War. So during that time frame, those people were going through serious, horrible hardship, and it manifested itself into a place like this when one woman has total control over children, and she is from a traumatized, war-torn place, and the only way she knows how to cope is punishment. And they didn't knock down the church, they just put drywall and paint over it. Then Hector reached out his hand and said, "Give me your papers." And we watched this man sign off the rest of our service hours for the entire summer. He gave us credit for all of it and all of the signatures. He said, "Go enjoy your summer and don't come back here. I'll make sure your mom is okay. She's always been okay. But I don't want to let that nun get close to you." I hope you guys enjoyed that story. If this is your first time on the channel, consider subscribing to it. If you like stories like this, we drop them all the time every week. If you haven't liked the video already, please like the video. It helps us so much more than you think. And if you really like this story, make sure to watch the next one on your TV at home, because that's how you're supposed to watch these. But as always, thank you all so much for supporting us. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I think we're switching the live streams to Friday nights because everybody has off work the next day and people could stay up a little bit later. So we'll see you next Thursday for a story, and we'll see you every Friday for a live stream for a bunch of giveaways. And if you've ever wanted to reach out to me, the best way to do it is to show up to a live stream. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd like to personally recommend this one.